On this episode, we speculate on Sting's cryptic tweet, talk about the Fandango and Summer Rae storyline, Santino's retirement, Hollywood Miz, and more on this edition of Bite That. Welcome everyone to episode 46 of Bite That, the so much somewhat maybe international professional wrestling podcast where we talk about the ups and downs of that which we love, which is the world of professional wrestling. My name is Juan Velas. I am from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and joining me as always is the one-man gang and star of Attack of the Landfish from Boston, Massachusetts, Ryan McNulty.
Oh, you're bringing that again on me? You're bringing that back up, Juan? Well, you know what?
I have to.
Let's just forget about that and just jump right into the show. How about that?
How about I never forget about your Starstruck past, sir? That was an amazing performance. Check it out on the YouTube. And something else I just cannot forget. Thank you to each and every one of you that listen in every single week. Last week's episode, most downloaded episode to date. So seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I love each and every one of you. Remember to hit that subscribe button in our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Bite That Cast, where starting this very week, we're going to be doing something a little special. The podcast is no longer going to be available on Thursdays. We're bringing it back. It's going to be available earlier every single week. We also have the latest edition of The Cheap Seat, the Raw Reception, a ton of stuff. Remember, the podcast is also available on iTunes and Stitcher. And for everything in social media, you can find us by doing Bite That Cast as a search. So each and every week, we tend to talk about these three individuals that were a very powerful tag team or faction, if you will, of the Shield. So, Ryan, how about we challenge ourselves to talk about the other things that are happening in WWE? Because it's not only about Dean Ambrose.
Really? I know, this is weird. We actually may not talk about the Shield this week, except for right now. So we already broke the rule.
One thing we did bring last week was that, of course, Jericho came back. He was also on SmackDown. But I posed the question on last week's episode of where did all this leave The Miz? The Miz was in the segment where he returned. He got code-breakered, then bam. He was also on SmackDown, also got code-breakered again. And now we see that this Hollywood Miz character is really a thing. He keeps talking about his phase as the moneymaker. His entrance always has this almost Hollywood Rock-esque, introduction where you see like the city and all that. And I just want to get your reaction. Are you glad that The Miz has this new face?
The only downside right now is that he's kind of just the jobber in this scenario because, he was involved with Chris Jericho when he came back. So now he's gotten code-breakered twice, and then he just lost to him on this Monday's Raw. It's unfortunate because I'm really digging this character change. So hopefully, once, Chris Jericho's in full Bray Wyatt mode, they can do something more with The Miz. I really liked his interview this week, bringing up the letter from Little Johnny Russo, which apparently was a dig at Vince Russo, and talking about, what a big fan he is of his. But I'm digging it. It's a new thing with The Miz, and it's making him a lot more interesting.
And I did like the fact that he brought up that letter because it wasn't just cocky, You have a guy that's so full of himself, even though, he's not technically as big as a star as he makes himself out to be. When The Rock was Hollywood Rock, he was doing Walking Tall, Scorpion King. Like, these movies got exposure, not straight to DVD and Blu-ray,
That almost makes it better, though. It makes it better because he's acting like he is such a big deal when he's really done a TV movie and two straight to DVD movies.
Over time, people can just be like, dude, seriously? Like, you're not The Rock. And he can just be like paranoid, be in denial. So I think it's great that they have all of that to work with. Do you see this sort of going by really quickly? Or do you think that they're going to keep doing this? There's a lot of stuff happening in the main event scene. Bad News Barrett is out. There's this battle royal taking place at Battleground. Where do you see him fitting? Because clearly, after Raw, I think the Jericho part is kind of done.
That's a really good question, and I think he's gonna float around that mid-card area for a little while. It seems like the whole main event scene is pretty locked up for the foreseeable future. But I don't know. Who do you think could be some possible feuds down the line, if you can think off the top of your head?
I actually see not just a one-on-one thing, but I see The Miz being involved with other guys that have that similar type of ego. So I'm talking Dolph Ziggler. I think that him and Ziggler could do a tremendous program. Dolph Ziggler has the show stealer character and all that. He's a babyface. Miz needs somebody that can definitely match him when it comes to, just this cocky over-the-top character. And somebody else that I'm going to bring up later again, Fandango. I think that these type of characters benefit Miz greatly. And would you agree with either one of those, or would you go with somebody else?
No, I definitely see that, because you're right, the personalities could definitely clash. Now, has Miz ever really worked a long-term program with Ziggler before?
Not that I recall right now.
Is it just that they've always kind of been heel? I mean, Ziggler's still relatively new to kind of being a primary babyface.
Exactly.
So, I don't know if they've ever really crossed paths outside of multi-man matches.
Now, one thing that I did want to bring up, when The Miz had that terrible face turn that I tried to forget, there was something else that made it even worse when he adapted the figure four leg lock to his moveset, which, people they wanted to kill the guy almost. But now that he's this cocky character, this arrogant character, do you think it actually benefits the fact that people dislike that he does that?
I guess you're right, where it can only work to his benefit. I don't really like anyone really other than maybe Ric Flair or Triple H doing the figure four. Because it kind of made sense, or it just felt more fitting if Ric Flair took somebody more similar to him under his wing, because The Miz and Ric Flair just seem like such, different, it doesn't seem like he would sort of be the apprentice to the Nature Boy, it's just, it doesn't fit at all, but I guess it's a good way to get heat, because or maybe people just always pop for the figure four. I don't know. Were people really that mad? I don't think people that were that mad about it on Raw this week. So I don't know. I don't really like it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just, I don't know. It's not that strong looking of a submission move. It always backfired on Flair, it doesn't have the same power behind it.
He even made fun of the fact that The Miz was having it as a finisher, and I think the comment was like, good luck winning a match with it, because I never did. He said something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like the sharpshooter where it's such a synonymous thing with people tapping out. Like people pop when Natty puts it on like crazy. So, that move is over. But the figure four, it's just too much associated with Ric Flair, and also doesn't have the power behind it that other submissions do.
So last question to close out this Miz portion. We're talking about the fact that we're enjoying this Miz. Do you like him in the sense that you like him, or do you like him in the sense that you want to hate him?
It's a little bit of both, because I kind of like it. I like that it's an actual kind of character. There's it's not just, hi, I'm The Miz and I'm awesome. It's, I'm from Hollywood, I'm better than everyone else. There's just a little bit more depth to him than there was before. And so it's fun to hate him. So I guess I like it and I don't like it at the same time. But mainly I like it.
Now, I'm pretty much going to have to agree. It's one of those things where I have never been able to take The Miz seriously. Even when I was a big fan of him at WrestleMania with the video packages and everything, something about him, honestly, I think it is the moneymaker. Something about his face I just dislike. But the great part is he's aware that people just do not like him. It probably doesn't help that he's also married to Maurice. I think a lot of people hate him because of that. But use that to your advantage. So I'm really looking forward to what's going to be happening with the Hollywood Miz. I just hope that they don't just have it right off as long as it possibly can without it really going a step further.
They can definitely do more with The Miz than they did during his last run, where he just kind of floated around the Intercontinental title scene and didn't really do much. There's a higher ceiling with this new Miz.
No, absolutely. And another guy that I want to talk about, which I mentioned is one of the possible feuds, I have to bring up Fandango. This week, he actually got a lot of spotlight on Raw. Not only was he out for the match involving Dolph Ziggler, interfering, sort of distracting, I guess you could say, Dolph Ziggler with the most amazing way to interfere or distract, which is you're not going to attack the guy. You're just going to stand up on the announcer table and not even dance, just move your body in the
Gyrate.
most awkward way. Yeah, in the most awkward way possible. Even I was looking up on Reddit before the show, and people were just loving it. You could tell the man was having fun, and the crowd was quick to react to him. What was your initial reaction to when he just started doing that out of nowhere?
Well, it kind of reminded me of early into his debut where he was just kind of outside the ring dancing. I think he was doing a very similar thing. His music would play and he would just distract, whoever it was he happened to be feuding with at the time. So this is very similar to that. But I liked it. I didn't think he was too strong on commentary, but this obviously made up for it. And so they got this mixed tag feud going on, I guess you can say.
One thing that I'm really happy, I brought up episode 30 or something like that. I met him when he was still Johnny Curtis in a very, very small and pathetic line at WrestleMania 2 years ago. I loved his NXT character, the game show or whatever I guess you could say NXT that most people tend to forget. NXT when it was like Maxine, Caitlyn was involved, Derek Bateman, who's now Ethan Carter III in TNA. And his character was just so dang weird, uncomfortable, awkward, and it made him awesome. And I think that as time goes by, Fandango continues to go back into that character that was portrayed as Johnny Curtis. And I think that is awesome, And as you mentioned, we have like this mixed tag team feud because obviously the reason he did that was because of the whole situation involving Summer Rae, who he dumped over a tweet. Then he's with Layla. Then Summer Rae proceeds to make out with Dolph Ziggler. And now it's like he's jealous, but not really, because then we got like this backstage segment with like Layla just, being very, I guess you could say, jealous. But then they do like just this overly sexual camera angle of Summer Rae that, any pre-pubescent 11-year-old or something probably went crazy for. What did you think of that over-the-top segment? I loved it. I thought it made things way more enjoyable.
Well, first of all, it always feels weird when a backstage segment, like the camera actually moves to another side of the room, because you're so used to just a fixed camera on one side. So it's kind of like this cinematic thing they had with Summer Rae, and then Layla doesn't see her and Fandango's looking at her and thinking about her. So he's still kind of torn between the two, even though he's telling Layla he's all about her. But so how they're going to continue to fit Ziggler in here, I think obviously we'll see a mixed tag match or something. And ultimately, I'm expecting Summer to stay with Dolph, and they become the new Hollywood Blondes.
No, I'm confused though, because clearly Summer Rae is either still in love with Wow, I feel like I'm talking about like some sort of like soap opera.
I know,
or
is this
something.
Total Divas right now?
But I think she's still in love with him or something. What's going on? Because she made out with Dolph Ziggler, but that she's making making $1 million moves on Fandango. So what's happening? Is this Total Divas? I love the fact that some wrestling fans, sometimes we include ourselves, will bash this type of stuff for happening. But you know what? It's part of the craziness that is professional wrestling. And I think it also gives Dolph Ziggler a different character or something. Like, where do you see Dolph Ziggler really being here? It's a tricky spot that he's in, because he's not the main focus.
No, and at least not as of now. It seems like it's more about Summer Rae and Layla almost than it is about Ziggler and Fandango, although Fandango definitely seems more involved than Ziggler, since it's sort of his choice who he wants to be with. But I'm just happy that Ziggler's in an actual program, because it looks like he's kind of getting into a better spot than he was in, a month and a half ago. He's actually involved with something. He lost to Del Rio this week, yes, but it was at least in a non-clean fashion. He's actually winning matches again. So, you know what? He's involved in a program, and I think that's good enough. You know, he was also in a Money in the Bank ladder match at the last pay-per-view. So it seems like he's, you know, getting into a better standing. And, you know, I think if they want to pair him and Summer Rae up, I think that's okay too. I mean, Ziggler's usually worked well when he's been paired up with somebody. Even, you know, he was with AJ and Big E, or when he was with Vicky Guerrero. I think he kind of works well, and he plays
Spirit
off.
Squad.
He plays off. Yeah, exactly. He plays off of other people really well. Chavo Guerrero. You know, he's been paired up with a lot of people in his career, so I think it's good.
Yeah, and I think that the WWE is realizing, you know what, people care about this guy because they took him to the very top and then almost made him extinct to a point, much like they did with Zack Ryder at some point. And it's a situation of he did great at Money in the Bank. He's doing all this stuff now, so at least he's relevant. Now, whether this means that in the future he'll move on up a lot, I don't think that's true because it's a packed main event scene right now. By the way, I do want to bring up something that I completely forgot that we were going to talk about last week, which you mentioned to me, about Curt Hawkins. Curt Hawkins, after being released from the WWE, sent out an interesting message over the social media universe sphere, talking about the fact that, I don't even know what that word is, talking about the fact that Zack Ryder's treatment after his push sort of broke the spirit of the locker room. Now, for those that don't know, just a very summarized thing, Zack Ryder basically started out as a major brother in WWE's version of ECW, proceeded to form a tag team with, or a faction with Edge and Curt Hawkins as the Edgeheads, where they look very similar to Edge. Afterwards, they broke out on their own. Afterwards, he started going solo as a bad guy, but thanks to his YouTube fame, basically people started loving the guy, myself included. I started saying, you woo-woo, you know it, in like 2007 when WWE still did online shows on their website. And then after that, he started doing the woo-woo character, turned babyface, T-shirts. Like, it was this whole thing, you know, like, Zack Ryder was on top of the world, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, I think obviously the pinnacle being when he won the United States Championship, and that was in 2011, correct?
Yeah.
Was that Survivor Series or TLC?
It was basically the show where, like, everybody wanted to win actually won. So we had, like,
and
CM
there was
Punk.
actually a moment when The Rock was out there, and was it Survivor Series that happened? Or was it a Raw or something? The Rock was out there, and people were actually chanting, "We want Ryder."
Yeah, and he acknowledged him, like, he, you know, like, the woo-woo thing and all that. Yeah, supported that, too. John Cena, like, everybody was supporting this guy on Twitter, like with The Rock, you know, when a temporary active superstar openly brings him up. And then after he got pushed, he literally got pushed off a wheelchair by Kane, and then everything just went to hell afterwards, you know, with Eva Marie. Wow, Eve Torres. No, wow, sorry. With Eve Torres, you know, who gave him a low blow. And after that, his career has never picked up. Like, Eve Torres has been gone from the WWE like over a year, for like 2 years or something like that. And ever since then, his career has basically just consisted of being jobbed out to guys like Rusev and all that.
I think I actually saw his last pay-per-view singles match live, which was when he fought Cesaro for the U.S. title in Night of Champions. Night of Champions 2012.
We're in 2014. Like, we are in summertime 2014. So the fact that Curt Hawkins brought this up now, I think it's actually pretty interesting because before Zack Ryder, it's going to sound ridiculous now. Before I keep going, I do want to say, like, I am aware. I've read the comments. I know most people that were big fans of him aren't now, or they do not like his wrestling. We can talk about that in a couple minutes. But the fact is, he made himself. Like, he created his own platform when WWE would not give him that. How many guys would have been fired, probably, you know, given any other circumstance? But he kept doing it. You got to respect the guy. And you can tell, like, he didn't know how to edit a video. He was using a flip cam. Like, he was just trying to be as desperate as possible to portray his character where WWE wouldn't let him. So, having just said that, not talking about the wrestling, not talking about getting in the ring, but seeing that devotion, what was your take on the whole Zack Ryder situation? Because we never really had a chance to talk about it.
Well, it actually reminds me of something I don't know if we actually talked about this before, but I know we had mentioned this interview before. John Cena had an interview on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and one thing he said is that about talent today's current roster is all of them are so afraid of getting fired that they won't take any risks. So I think it's pretty relevant for Kurt Hawkins to say it really broke the spirit of the locker room, because here was a guy, Zack Ryder, who actually took that risk. He went above and beyond and succeeded. And then WWE kind of did everything in their power to make him not succeed, because he got over on his own and not with their help. So, I mean, how can that not crush the spirit? Because then that just means that anybody else out there, no matter what they do, because WWE they can hold them down if they don't want them to succeed.
Now, before I go on any further, I do want to point out, like, even the last WWE show that was in Puerto Rico was a Raw event. I knew Zack Ryder was going to be there. I actually had a broski sign. He pointed out to me, he retweeted and all that. So I was full on board, like the Zack Ryder train. You know, I had a friend of mine give me a Zack Ryder broski beat Sprite. I can post a picture of that somewhere. A shout out to Jamie. So I was really into all this. One thing that maybe this is what happened. Somewhat maybe. Once Zack Ryder was all the way at the top, once, you know, he was champion, I thought his character needed to change. It was still it was forced. It seemed like he was still trying to get over, and it's like, guess what, dude? You're the U.S. champion. Like, you have a lot of Twitter followers. WWE's acknowledging you. You're over. Now you got to do something else to keep being over. But I thought he still kept doing woo-woo, you know, the exact same way. His matches were the exact same sequence. Now, of course, we're not involved behind the scenes, so we don't know if it's his choice, you know, if they're telling him backstage, just do what gets you over and what got you over. So maybe that was an issue. But me as a fan, I grew tired of wanting to be in the Zack Ryder crazy train, because it was the same thing every week. You know, broski, woo-woo-woo, broski boot, Rough Rider, you know, rinse, wash, and repeat. And I just didn't feel like they were giving him, or he was giving himself, a chance to evolve from the character that established him. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he was afraid that if he changed or something, you know, that was the character that got him over. But, like, what's your take on this whole thing?
No, it's true. I think to truly kind of propel yourself to the top, you have to adapt or perish, I guess you could say. And
it's the truth.
Zack Ryder failed to adapt. And I think we saw a hint of this, like a glimpse that he was trying to evolve with his last resort segments, but then that was it. 3 episodes, done, nothing else. And, you know, why should we care?
Yeah, and he made a reference to the fact that I guess WWE told him to stop doing those videos, which, once again, is sort of contradictory to John Cena being in Stone Cold's podcast saying, hey, don't be afraid to speak out. Like, here's Zack Ryder going back again to the thing that made him famous, and then changing his character. He even smashed his broski championship or whatever it was. 3 episodes in, gone. So where is this brass ring? Obviously, we don't know. You know, I never plan on being a wrestler. So whatever the case, it's just a bittersweet thing to talk about. Now, something else that is kind of bittersweet to mention, we got an unexpected retirement taking place this past weekend in Canada, wherein Santino Marella announced that he's had multiple neck injuries, and as a result, he needs to retire immediately. One of the things he brought up was the fact that he regretted never being able to be built from Canada, because his character is obviously portrayed from Italy, even though he's actually a Canadian citizen, you know, born and raised over there. Much like Zack Ryder, and this is why I wanted to bring it up after, there are always lovers, there are always haters, you know, to a character like Santino, who's always been comedy-driven, you know, the Cobra and all that. But like him or hate him, he just devoted so much time to making sure families got their money's worth. And talk about a guy that got the most awkward career. Like, Do you remember how Santino came into the WWE?
Of course, I'll never forget when he was the Milan Miracle. He was in the crowd. Yeah. Vince McMahon was challenging anyone in the audience to face Umaga for the Intercontinental title, and then Santino just kind of slips by and pulls a victory out and becomes Intercontinental Champion on his first day.
And it's crazy because in any other situation, that would have probably been a temporary thing, something like that. But he made the character work and evolve. We forget that when Santino started off, he was not this comedy character. He just had an Italian accent. Throughout this time, he actually became a heel, a bad guy. He was with Beth Phoenix, and that was an awesome pairing. He turned into Santino Marella. There was one point, and then this is what I wanted to bring up. Elimination Chamber. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely. That was probably the highlight of his career.
Exactly. For those that don't know, he was actually involved in an Elimination Chamber match, and I believe Daniel Bryan was the World Heavyweight Champion at the time, and he was one of the last contenders in the match. And guess what? The way he was built in that one match, before that, he was just Santino, the comedic element added to the match, but the way he made the people care about him in that match, even myself, at the beginning of the match, I was like, really, just get it over with. I wanted him to win. I wanted him to beat Daniel Bryan, who I've wanted to become champion since forever, and I was willing to go on the Santino World Heavyweight Champion bandwagon. No script can cause that. Nobody backstage can cause that. Only the man behind Santino Marella can do that. And like him or hate him, that was an unbelievable experience. And it's sad that he retired never being able to know, what if that would have happened? Would people take the comedic character known as Santino Marella seriously? What would you have it? How would you have reacted to that?
I think I would have been all for it, because just the way he was in that match, everyone wanted to see him win, and they would have went nuts for it. Even, I think you could have just done a one-day title reign, and that would have been fine. I think that would have been the perfect way to do it. You still have, it was right near WrestleMania, you still have Daniel Bryan win it back from WrestleMania, and you do your match. That was really just an amazing moment. And Santino, a lot of people hate him because he was just a straight up comedy character, but I mean, there was a lot of times where his comedy really shined, and he really was a great addition to the show. Not every, some jokes fell flat, but I think the guy overall is just a funny guy. Yeah. And even the fact that he stayed in character in some of the DVDs and stuff, I mean, the guy is hilarious.
And such devotion to such a character that should not have been around as long as it did. And the fact of the matter is, he retired with the character. He was never fired for it. Now, he made reference to becoming a general manager. He's probably going to become a backstage agent or something. Hopefully, he won't get speared by Roman Reigns. But Santino, sad to see such an unexpected departure. Sad to see that nothing was announced on Raw. I definitely think that not just a house show thing should have been the way to go.
They could still do something,
Yeah.
It's not too late.
Long live, sir. You're still alive, and I know we're going to get to see him somehow. Maybe not in a wrestling role, but he's going to be around somehow. One of the things that I do want to bring up before we split off the show into this week's Pick of the Week is the fact that we also got a Divas tag team match that was unorthodox, I guess is the way that I could bring it up. We had the Funkadactyls, the Funkadactyls. Paige and AJ Lee faced the Funkadactyls, and it was weird considering both teams have their respective storylines going on. The Funkadactyls, I guess, split based on what happened on Raw. But Paige and AJ Lee, who we thought would be, hating each other or something, Paige came out and smiles, introducing AJ Lee. All they had to do was friggin' go to TGI Fridays and celebrate their victory or something because of the way they were reacting. Having said that, where do you think they're going with this Paige and AJ Lee situation?
I think this is a situation where they're going to play nice and, act like they really respect each other, and they may actually do respect each other, but I think they're going to act like friends, and then it's eventually going to spiral into a real bitter rivalry. And maybe even if they do have that rematch at Battleground, that they're still going to treat it like friendly competition. And then, slowly you start seeing the bitterness between the two. If they plan on doing the long-term thing, we could see them already hating each other by Battleground, but I think the right way to play it is to have them keep playing nice with hints of dissension between each other before it slowly breaks down into just a complete, blood feud.
Yeah, I think the best way to put it is keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. So what better way to keep that hatred going than by just pretending? And obviously they were both being very sarcastic. They were both being these over-the-top characters that we are not used to seeing. So the fact of the matter is I think they're both just buying into each other's things, knowing, as a character that eventually they're just going to hate each other. And I like that because they're not going the easy route of Paige is out for revenge now. So, they're tag teaming and all that. So one thing I did note is that it was weird how they didn't build that up even more. The fact that they were tag teaming, it just, it felt like a blow off or something. Did it feel important for you?
Not really. It just seemed very out of place. It was weird to see last week Paige is acting more intense. She's working a harder style in her match, more aggressive style. Yeah. And then she's all smiles coming out this week because, we expected Paige was kind of leaning towards a heel turn, and then all of a sudden, it's all play nice, friendly between the two. So it was very weird to see just a complete shift in tone. So it's sort of like they kind of just flipped the script and realized, it's better to do it this way. They just kind of rewrote the storyline.
One thing I do see as a big benefit, obviously Paige hasn't been getting the crowd reactions, crowd response that I guess WWE wanted. So by teaming her up with AJ, even if not a tag team, but just like his buddy or something, she can sort of feed off of AJ Lee's reactions, obviously because of the whole CM Punk thing. Let's be honest, that also plays a big factor. Plus, AJ Lee was over way before she was announced as being Punk's, girlfriend, fiance, or whatever. So I think that this benefits both. And that this is the feud that's going to continue building up, and I don't think this is a SummerSlam blow-off. I think that we are, much like I mentioned last week, seeing the next Diva feud as opposed to just a Diva feud. So I myself am really looking forward to this. I just hope that Paige doesn't come out looking like the second character. I hope that we do get a Trish and Lita thing where it's like, you know what? They can both be just as over. Doesn't matter who's good or bad, but we need that because what does it matter that we have Cameron and Naomi feuding? Eventually, every diva should want to go after the championship. But if there's not that solid base, that's not just one champion, if you get a couple of divas that are just up there, every other diva is going to look better when they beat them.
Absolutely. It takes a long time to get a diva over. Think about how many storylines AJ Lee was involved in to really kind of make herself the diva. I think that initial build-up with being, with Daniel Bryan as he was world champion, and then, you had the whole CM Punk, Daniel Bryan love triangle, and then, she becomes GM. She was involved in so many storylines to become the diva. So it's a lot of work to get people to really care about a diva. So Paige has got a long road ahead of her to kind of be on par with AJ. But as long as you're putting in the work, she will get there because, she has the ability. And it's also nice that they're supplementing the other divas with feuds that are going on at the same time. It's not just one diva feud per show anymore.
Yeah, and I think that is the best way to go. And I think this tag match is an indication where we can get multiple feuds going, even in the same match, and still have it work. So I'm really happy about that. Something else that I'm happy with, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the pick of the week. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with the second edition of the pick of the week. What do we have in store for these beautiful people this week, Ryan?
Well, we are plugging two excellent YouTube channels that you guys should check out. This is Peter Rosenberg and Not Sam. So first we're going to talk about Peter Rosenberg. This guy, he is a radio DJ from Hot 97 who is an avid WWE fan, and he does various interviews throughout the year with all types of WWE superstars and, even wrestlers from TNA and, wrestlers from the past as well. So, this guy, he knows his stuff. It's not your typical radio interview where they just kind of talk about, the next house show or pay-per-view or whatever. He actually asks some inside questions, and pretty much every single interview I've seen of his, whether you even like the superstar or not, there is something to take away. You learn a little bit more about them, and you gain a lot of respect for a lot of these people, getting an inside look into their lives. The second channel is Sam Roberts, also known as Not Sam, so that's youtube.com/Not Sam. Both of these channels, by the way, are they're on our YouTube channel under what is it, related channels?
Yeah, featured channels. So
channels.
Go to youtube.com/BiteThatCast. They should be on the right side of the page.
Sam Roberts, you might have actually seen if you've watched some of the WWE Countdown shows. He actually does some of the interviews on there. He's got a big afro or whatever. He's a skinny guy. But anyway, he, very similar to Peter Rosenberg, does a lot of interviews with WWE talent, and once again, another big fan of wrestling. So these are both guys that are giving excellent interviews, and especially, I think one of their more recent ones are from WrestleMania 30 with interviews from, Daniel Bryan, Seth Rollins, Natalia, Titus O'Neil. There's plenty of great ones. There's interviews with Hulk Hogan.
If you're also an independent wrestling fan, Not Sam has an excellent interview with Adam Cole. And I think that one thing that we need to bring up is the fact that, much like you mentioned, one of these individuals has been featured on the WWE Network, so you know that they're reliable. These aren't just fans. These aren't just people that like to talk about wrestling. Wow, I'm talking about myself. These are people that are within the industry. Peter Rosenberg is actually great friends with Mark Henry. So these are people that don't just respect, don't just watch, don't just live, but also understand and are involved with the world of professional wrestling. So check him out. It's youtube.com/Peter Rosenberg and youtube.com/Not Sam, or head over to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BiteThatCast, and check out the right side of the page. So let us know if you've had a chance to visit either one of these excellent YouTube channels and which are some of your favorite interviews. The Mark Henry one is awesome. There are a ton of awesome ones there, so certainly check them out. And remember, you can also get them in our YouTube channel, which this week we have the Raw reception where Ryan talks about Bret Hart returning to the WWE. There is the latest edition of the Cheap Seat where I talk about the fact that Chris Jericho talked a little bit too much about his return in his podcast, almost completely breaking character, and I think it's actually pretty awesome. We have next week, cool announcement, next Thursday, the following Thursday, that is, I should probably get a calendar out before I say this, the July 17th, my top 5 things that I need to be in WWE 2K15, July 17th, that is a Thursday. It's going to be available in our YouTube channel. And remember, if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, you may notice that they're being uploaded every single Tuesday night. We're going to be trying to make sure that is always happening, so you can get it when you're on the road. You can watch it or listen to it every morning. We're also going to be making sure our YouTube channel has the podcast up every single Tuesday. No promises, as we're working on this transitional period on our way to episode 50, which includes a complete overhaul of BiteThat.com, where you'll be able to get all of our content, not just the podcast. So, Ryder, are you looking forward, man? 4 episodes away from episode 50, sir.
It's hard to believe, but I am super pumped for it, and I can tell you I've seen what the website is going to look like. You will not be disappointed at all.
And we do have an awesome announcement at episode 50 that you certainly do want to check out. A quick hint, what am I talking about next week? In the cheap seat, maybe some about those things. So that's also going to be pretty cool. Something that is pretty insane just before we hit the record button. And thank you, Because usually what happens is we'll record a podcast and somebody gets released or something, you know. This week, just before we hit the record button, Sting sent out a tweet stating simply 7/14/14. That is a Monday, folks. That is next week's Monday. And just before that, he tweeted a picture of himself in face paint. Let the tinfoil hats develop. Let the speculation begin, sir. What are we getting here? What are we getting ourselves into? Could this just be nothing? Could Sting just be getting a new house and he's just happy that he's going to purchase it next Monday? Or what's going to happen?
I think we are just setting ourselves up for one big disappointment. It just seems too good to be true, too obvious that Sting would come back to Raw, or not come back, but appear for the first time ever on Raw. It just seems like this just came out of nowhere, and it doesn't seem likely. I mean, we know he's working with WWE in some capacity. He's doing some interview stuff for DVDs and the network, but that's as far as we know. So, I mean, the fact that they are working together in any capacity leaves that option open, but I don't know, it just seems like it's too obvious and WWE wouldn't allow something like that. I'm not sure. I think maybe they just want to get some buzz going. It could be, you know what just came into my head? It could be just the announcement that Sting is going to be in 2K15. That's all it could be.
Yeah, probably. And because of the fact that good old JR, Jim Ross, revealed that in Stone Cold's podcast, I think that it's best they do that. You know, I think that Sting is a great promotional tool for not just WWE 2K15, but the network itself, you know. Like this week, we have the long week free WWEnetwork.com trial. No credit card required. Wow, I sound like I'm advertising it. But it's like you don't need to, all you got to put is your email address and you can watch all of that. So I think that Sting would be a great ambassador for the network considering all the WCW stuff. I don't think that we should expect anything else other than that type of involvement. You know, network, WWE 2K15, like any actual active role in the roster, I think that's just never going to happen, especially after, you know, the 1 and 21 and 1 is a thing now, so that would not leave a lot more else for Sting to do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, I don't know how long this Monday Night War show, which I wasn't able to catch and apparently won't be actually up on the network to watch until August, but I don't know how long that's going to run, how much they draw that out if they're going year by year. But obviously he would be a great asset to have on that show as well as any other WCW type documentary, you know, content. But you're right. I mean, I think they really just missed the boat on the Undertaker match. The fact that the streak is over really kills the interest in that match.
Yeah, I agree. And as actually you were recording the Raw reception, I'll admit I was watching a little bit of WWE Network in bed. I caught just a little bit because it was a sneak peek, so you can watch from the very beginning. But from what I was gathering, the Monday Night War thing is essentially like WrestleMania Rewind, which is like they take these things and then just basically interview everyone around it. Now, having said that, this is just a sneak peek, so it's not the full episode, I think, but I did find odd that it's like, you know, they used that infamous Eric Bischoff interview from 2003 with the old Raw set in the background. You know, Triple H still has long hair. There's a bunch of interviews from 2009. So it felt like they were stringing a lot of old stuff together to make this. Now, obviously, you know, the network has been in the work for years, so maybe a lot of these interviews were recorded for the network. You know, they did interview guys like Lex Luger, so I think it's awesome that we're getting the people that were within the Monday Night War themselves, as opposed to just, you know, hearing Jim Ross or somebody talk about it. We're getting the wrestlers that were involved in the controversial stuff directly being interviewed.
My question, well, yeah, they were definitely filming network stuff. I mean, it was planned to launch a couple of years ago, so a lot of the footage, like Legends House and all that, is years old at this point. But my question to you is, how fast were they moving through content? Like, how, like, do you expect this to be, like, multiple seasons of this show? Like, this could be the network's long-term show? Or is this going to be, like, Legends House, where it's sort of one season?
Well, at least this definitely felt like a sneak peek because they were very general. So they were talking about things like, Hulk Hogan's controversial decision to, jumping ship to WCW and the fact that Vince on a personal level felt impacted. This is basically, if you've watched the Monday Night War DVD, you've already watched the sneak peek, because for the most part, there's a couple of new interviews, but really it's basically the same thing. Now, I'm assuming that this is going to be a season-long thing where they maybe take periods, not episode by episode, but periods. How did the NWO really come together, like behind the scenes, even though there's been an NWO DVD, even though there's been a Monday Night Wars DVD, but you can always elaborate. You can always learn more stuff. And I think that just, once again, having so many people that were involved being interviewed makes it awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if it's a more long-term thing and they're kind of taking it, maybe a month or two at a time, they'd be able to probably get like Eric Bischoff interviews now, considering he's no longer involved with TNA. I'm assuming that's why they didn't have any new interviews for the stuff they filmed a couple years ago. So, I feel like there's now more available talent to kind of make that show even better.
Definitely. And keep in mind, Monday Night Wars is scheduled to come out on August. So it's July, so it's not that far off. But at the same time, we're wrestling fans. We are very impatient, so just have it come out. Now, something that I do want to ask you, sir, before we hit the record button, you told me you had a pretty interesting article regarding the network. The floor is yours, sir. Go crazy. What do you got for us?
Well, actually, it's not necessarily the article. It's the comments. Now, about a month ago, we were talking about the WWE Network and the fact that it had disappointing numbers, and that, we were questioning ourselves, why doesn't anyone else want the network? I mean, sure, even if you don't care about Legends House, you don't care about the Monday Night War, the fact that you get every pay-per-view of the year for $10 a month.
$10.
That is 100% the appeal to me. Like, I like all the other shows that they add on there. They're fun and nice and everything. But it's the pay-per-views that I really care about. Yep. Everything else I could do without. Even if this service was literally $10 a month for all the pay-per-views, I'm sold. So this article doesn't say anything too far off from your normal thing of why, their theories as to why it's not working. But what really interested me was the comments from your average wrestling fan explaining why they don't have the network. So I'm just going to read a few of these. This is articles from Fool.com. Hopefully it's not a complete joke. I think it's an actual legitimate news site, or an opinion site, I guess you could say. But anyway.
Could have fooled me.
So I'll read one comment here, and the guy's name is actually some weird spelling of psychosis, so he's a wrestling fan. So he says, I, like many fans, enjoy wrestling. This includes WWE and TNA. Right now, both have decent storylines and are interesting to an extent. The WWE right now is a bit predictable, but I think every wrestling organization goes through that to some extent. So I am a wrestling fan. Why don't I have the WWE network? Simple. Money, time, and access. Everything on the WWE network I have seen or will see in the future. Why pay for something I can get for free? Why put the money there when it's better spent in other ways? My point is this. Unless you are an absolute diehard fan, the WWE network is not appealing. I have a few friends who are diehard fans, and they both have the network. One of them is already considering canceling for the reasons I mentioned above. My point is not to criticize the WWE or any other wrestling organization, but rather to give them some insight into why WWE Network is not appealing. The WWE investors are promised huge numbers, and thus far they haven't met half of where they're supposed to be. Investors are generally not fans, they want financial results. If I was an investor, I would be furious with the WWE for being misled and to have to deal with this situation. Now I'm hoping to break even rather than make a profit, and this is not good. Remember, WWE sold them on 1.5 to 2 million, with at least 1 million by now. The subscriptions are moving much slower than WWE promised after the slow start, as well as this is another issue that further compounds this issue. So the last paragraph was kind of irrelevant, but let's see. The problem with why WWE Network is doing gangbusters is partly due to their pricing tier. Sure, they can claim it's $9.99 a month until they're blue in the face. It isn't. Not when they have to drop $60 all at once.
No,
the
they
core
don't.
audience, I know. They don't have to be right.
No, but that's actually a thing to note, that maybe people misunderstand that.
And here's another one. The biggest reason the WWE Network's doing low numbers is the fact that old web sources, smart TVs, and DVD players can't accept the app download. Most devices less than 2 years old have no problem with this addition. Buying a new device can be cheap, but most fans would rather have the paraphernalia the WWE pushes. So that's another thing, access to the device. So these are just a few insights. Some people, the one that interested me the most obviously was the fact that people think, oh, I can just look it up online or go to WWE.com to get, to just find out what happened. Why pay the money when I can get the results on Raw the next night even?
Now, one thing that I guess I never really thought about until you read the first one part is that, he's watched it. And I think that there's a really big problem with WWE's comparison, and I would love to know what you think of this. They say, like, it's better than Hulu, it's better than Netflix. There's a problem. Say you want to watch... No, first of all, I completely agree. Like, I still get problems watching NXT live, or, like, when they air it live, quote-unquote, in the network on my PS3. Like, it's been out for months now. But even more so, say you want to watch Ghostbusters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever movie, you want to watch or something, even if it's a sequel, movies do a very good job of getting you up to date. You're following a story. With wrestling, it's not so much like that. A lot of times I'll pop in the network, I'll want to watch a pay-per-view, but I'm like, the problem is I like to know about the story before the match. And even though commentators try to sell that, we visually just get like a 1-2 minute video package, for each match. So there's little incentive. Like the other day I was watching Bash at the Beach when Ric Flair took on Hulk Hogan. Honestly, that pay-per-view was very boring to me. But at the same time, I didn't watch it when it originally aired, and I didn't really have a lot of the background story. So maybe if I knew why, there was Guardian Angel, why there were all these guys, I would have enjoyed it. I don't need that with Netflix. I can just pop in, I can know exactly when this started. Movie number 1, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Then I watched Two Towers. How do you know where do you start with a wrestling thing? It can start, it's like 6 months. You got to watch how many episodes to stay up to date. Wrestling is not nearly as accessible for the story portion of the thing.
Well, like I said, I think that the main thing that they should honestly be pushing is just the pay-per-views. I mean, because that is the true appeal of the network. I mean, I think even if you just had all the old Vault stuff there, they didn't even have to do any of these shows. I think you're just kind of overwhelming people with all these content. I mean, I think some of the shows are nice and enjoyable, and I agree. I mean, it's easier to just pick up and watch a movie than to watch a pay-per-view from 1995. You're going to appreciate a movie from 95 more than you're going to appreciate a pay-per-view, just because you get a complete story, a beginning, a middle, and an end, where you're kind of just coming into the middle of things with wrestling. I mean, anyone who's started watching wrestling knows there's that adjustment period where you're still like learning the names of everyone you're seeing on TV and what, really the whole thing to it. I mean, wrestling isn't an easy thing to just jump right into, and neither is the network.
Have we effectively talked about the main issue with the network? Because even ourselves, I'm just going to ask you right now, when is the last time, not including the pay-per-view, that you've watched the network?
It's pretty much for NXT exclusively. And then, I did watch Countdown this weekend. And that was the first time in a while.
But see, that's the thing. You brought up a show that fills you in, as opposed to just watching a pay-per-view. And I think that there's a trend here, and the problem is, obviously, these shows take way longer to produce, way longer to edit, as opposed to a 3-hour pay-per-view, which you may only care about the main event, which you may only care about here, then you got to skip. So basically, it really is just not that much more accessible. So I actually want to bring this question out to each and everybody that's listening to the show right now. Do you agree with our thing that wrestling's just not that easy to pick up and play, if you will? Let us know by sending us a tweet at BiteThatCast, or if you're listening on YouTube, just leave something in the comment section below.
Well, and another question to everyone. I'm assuming not everyone who's listened to this has the WWE Network. So if you don't, let us know why. Give us your personal reason as to why. Even if, maybe your parents won't get it for you, or maybe, you don't think it's worth the money, or whatever it is. Maybe you only care about getting one pay-per-view a year, so you'd rather just spend the $60 once than, twice a year. Whatever that reason is, let us know. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment, send us a direct message, or tweet us at BiteThatCast. All the social media we're available on. Let us know.
I just really hope that as a fan, the network does not flop, because I'm very scared of what the consequences will be. Because I really don't think it'll just be like, oh, well, network's gone back to the regularly scheduled program. I think that you hit the nail on the head where the WWE should promote the pay-per-views. But if you notice, they only did it at the beginning. Like they actually gave us like a calculated expense of how much people spend versus the network. That was only like 1 or 2 times when they first announced it. Now they never do. So there's probably some kind of legal factor, or maybe just, they don't want to like piss off the pay-per-view people or something. That's what sells it, at least for me.
And another thing is the whole pre-show kickoff thing. They just immediately ripped that off of YouTube. And it's now a network-only thing. I mean, wouldn't that have been a better way? I mean, you could even put in an annotation, click to sign up for the network to see the rest of the show. I thought it was kind of foolish of them to sort of get rid of that YouTube pre-show thing, where, I don't know, I'm gonna take a guess that, a lot of people did view that on YouTube, maybe even more than they have in subscriptions. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know their numbers, but I thought that, what better way to get people to sign up than have them watch the pre-show on their computers where they can sign up.
No, and one last thing that I do want to bring up, the Monday Night Wars premiere was during this free week period, right? But you can't actually watch that sneak peek, unless you watched it live. And the problem is, you, sir, are a subscriber, and you were telling me last night, oh, so I'll just watch it before the podcast so we can talk about it. Were you able to watch it?
No, I read, the news this morning that it was just a sneak peek, and I can't even watch it.
That's somebody that's had the subscription since day one. Are you happy about that?
Absolutely not. I mean, literally everything else is available as soon as they upload it.
So basically, they're almost punishing us. Like, once again, I was only able to watch a portion. Yeah, people uploaded it online. That's always going to be a thing. But the fact of the matter is, don't punish those that have been with you since day one, like ourselves. And then just because you have this free week trial, oh, guess what? After a 3-hour show, oh yeah, you got to watch this premiere also.
Exactly. I mean, they expect us to after spending 3 hours devoting time to watching them, that, oh, if you want to watch this, you have to watch WWE for another hour. It's pretty demanding of them. I think that was a bad strategy, especially like you said, during that free week. I mean, they could, that would have been a good way to promote, that's one of their original shows. I mean, other than Countdown,
WrestleMania Rewind.
They do have Rewind
that, yeah.
and Beyond the Ring and all that, but their real main shows of is probably the Monday Night War and Legends House, and they're not even letting people get a look at that unless they watched it during that small window.
Which, by the way, if you're upset, kind of like we are about the situation, let us know by sending us a tweet. Which, Ryan, give us all that information, give us all that goodness that you gave us just a couple of minutes ago, but now you're going to do it differently.
All right, well, we want to thank you for listening once again this week, and as Juan said, tweet us about your thoughts on the WWE Network, why you don't have it, why you do have it, by tweeting us at BiteThatCast. You'll also want to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BiteThatCast, where we have the Raw reception every single Monday night, as well as once Cheap Seat, he talked about Chris Jericho commenting on his return on his podcast, as well as every single Saturday you get the weekly filler with my take on the latest headlines in wrestling. Don't forget to also like us on Facebook, facebook.com/BiteThatCast. That is going to do it. We want to thank you again for listening, and we will see you next week.